want to transition. I don't touch on baseball too much, but I will as this starts to turn the base. As we start to shift corners into the MLB postseason, which is going to be coming up later in a couple of months. But there was some news out of the MLB. They did just recently issue um, a substance memo, kind of an update substance memo. Now, what we do know is that they're enforcing more punitive measures to players and specifically pitchers that are caught cheating using foreign substances, some types of illicit creams such as sunscreen, and specifically there's one called Spider Tack and Rosin to enhance a pitcher's grip and control over their spin and over their pitches. Now, we know that across all sports, every sport's been trying to mitigate the number of advantages that little teams can get. The NBA, you fine players for flopping now, which used to be a tactic employed to earn a whistle in years past, right? And now what the NBA said was, okay, you can still do that, but we'll just fine you. We'll just fine you every time you do that. So it's trying to discourage NBA flops from happening. In the NFL, you'll see that, especially on defense, when an offensive team has a lot of momentum, is playing a hurry up, a defensive player will just fall to the floor and sometimes fabricate having some cramps and going down on the ground, normally to stop momentum, to stop tempo. Now, it's not to suggest that all NFL players are fabricating. Some NFL players, listen, the NFL is a brutal sport. That happens. But what the NFL came out and said was they added some new legislation and said, okay, if you're going to fall down to the ground, then you're going to have to miss the next play. And so if you're in a critical spot in the game and you're tired and you're exhausted and it's 3rd down and 10 and you decide, hey, I want to fall to the ground to stop momentum, that's fine. But then on the even bigger 4th down play, you're going to have to stand or take a seat on the sideline. So they're enforcing different punitive measures to hopefully, again, discourage players from trying to take advantage of that situation. So the MLB, this obviously came amid reports that a lot of the players, and again, specifically the pitchers, were using these foreign substances. Most notably, Trevor Bauer with the Dodgers, of course, was kind of quote unquote caught using these foreign substances. Garrett Cole of the Yankees, Justin Verlander. There are actually several others, according to a Sports Illustrated reporter. They interviewed a former LA Angels clubhouse manager by the name of Brian Harkins, I believe was his name. Yeah, Brian Harkins, who said that he had given foreign substances to several players, including Max Scherzer, Corey Kleber, Adam Wainwright, among others. So we know that baseball, listen, the old adage from Richard Petty, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. Baseball is one of the oldest sports ever invented in the early 1800s. Lacrosse was technically the oldest sport ever invented. Baseball is right behind them in American sports in the early 1800s. And we know that there have been traditions and practices and customs that have been passed down from generation to generation. Now, on face value, just implementing and enforcing these rules, right, invoking these extra regulations, I don't have a problem with that on face value, because the reality is, if you're caught cheating, you should be punished. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, it's broke, and the MLB is trying to fix it. And when I hear all this pushback from guys like Tyler Glasnow, who's the pitcher for the Tampa Bay Rays, of, well, this, the fact that you prevented me from using sunscreen and rosin on my pitches contributed to me hurting my arm and tearing my UCL. Well, sorry, you got caught cheating with this stuff. Now, again, he wasn't against enforcing these rules altogether. He was more upset with the fact that these rules were being invoked midway through the season. And that's a similar sentiment that some of the other players share. But at the same time, listen, you get away with something as long as you can. But eventually, when you're caught, there deserve to be ramifications. So I have no problem with the MLB saying, listen, sorry if this disrupts your midseason routines, but this is the course of action. And of course, there's a direct correlation between the batting average among the MLB across the league average before these new measures were in place. The league batting average was 237, 236 prior to these rules. After these rules have been enforced, the National League, or not the National League, but the MLB league average has risen to 247. So I'm not necessarily insinuating that pitchers all of a sudden have regressed to the means and batters are conveniently, coincidentally hitting better, but I'm sure there's some correlation between the two. So again, for guys that take umbrage at the fact that it's being implemented midway through the season, get over it. You did it as long as you can. You got caught, and the MLB decided to step in, and I have no problem with it. I have no problem with it whatsoever, especially given the fact that it's been so rampant and pervasive in the league this entire season. So I have no problem with it whatsoever. Okay, transitioning to